Hello friends. I used to believe my marriage was solid. Not perfect, because no marriage is, but good enough to last a lifetime. My wife, Emily, and I had been together for 10 years, married for 8, and from the outside looking in, we were the picture of stability. 2 kids, a nice house in the suburbs, and a routine that felt comfortable, but comfortable can sometimes turn into complacent. At least, that's what Emily started saying. That it started small, little complaints about how she felt stiff all the time, or how she needed to take better care of herself. She began talking about self-care, relaxation, the importance of personal time. Then, she brought up the massage therapist. There's this place in town, Serenity Spa, she said over dinner one night. I heard they have the best deep tissue massages. I think I'm going to start going weekly. I didn't think much of it at first. Emily had always liked being pampered. She was the kind of woman who loved attention, loved being doted on. If getting a massage every now and then made her happy, who was I to complain? But then, things started to shift. The weekly visits became twice a week. Then 3 times, she started coming home later than usual. Her mood changed. She was suddenly happier, lighter, almost giddy, and, maybe the biggest red flag of all? She stopped wanting sex. Now, I'm not some guy who expects his wife to be all over him every night, but when the woman who used to initiate suddenly starts giving excuse after excuse, headache, tired, too stressed, after just coming back from a spa that's supposed to be relaxing, you start to wonder that I ignored it at first. I told myself I was being paranoid, but the pit in my stomach wouldn't go away. Something was off, and soon, I would find out just how deep the betrayal ran. The more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Emily had never been the type to stick to any routine. She had gym memberships she barely used, yoga classes she attended twice before getting bored, and a whole drawer full of expensive skincare products that collected dust. But now, she was religiously going to the spa multiple times a week. Something didn't add up. Then came the first real clue. One evening, she came home from her massage appointment later than usual. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to watch TV, but in reality, I was watching her. She walked in, looking flushed, her hair slightly messy, and her shirt a little too wrinkled for someone who was supposed to have been lying face down on a massage table. That I frowned. "You're late." She blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Huh? Oh. Yeah. The spa was really busy tonight." I nodded slowly. "Really?" "Because I checked their website earlier. They close at 7. Her face froze for a split second. Just a flash of panic before she forced a smile. "Oh, well, I stayed after for some tea in their lounge area. You know, to relax." Lies that I knew she was lying, but I didn't call her out. Not yet. Instead, I just said, "Got it." And let her think she had fooled me, because now, I was going to find out the truth for me. The next day, while Emily was out, I did something I had never done before. That I checked our bank statements. That I wasn't usually the type to snoop, but something in my gut told me I needed to look, and sure enough, her spa visits were paid in cash every single time. That was weird. Emily never used cash. She liked her points, her cashback rewards. She was always swiping a card. But for some reason, every trip to Serenity Spa, cash only. Now, I was officially suspicious. So, I decided to dig deeper. I pulled up her Google Maps history on the family laptop, hoping it would confirm her trips to the spa. First, it did. The location data showed multiple visits to Serenity Spa, but then, I noticed something strange. Every time she visited the spa, she made an extra stop afterward. One that wasn't listed in our conversations. An apartment complex, across town. She had been going there after her spa sessions, and suddenly, I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was sure that my wife was cheating. And I was about to prove it. At this point, I wasn't just suspicious. I knew Emily wasn't just going to the spa. She was going somewhere else afterward. And now, thanks to her Google Maps history, I had an address, an apartment complex across town. But the big question remained: who was she meeting? Was it some old fling? A coworker I had never met? Or was it someone even closer? I didn't have to wait long to find out. That night, I played it cool that I smiled at dinner, nodded along as she talked about how amazing her latest massage session was. I asked casual questions. How was it? Same therapist as usual? She didn't even flinch. Yeah, of course. Same guy. You know how hard it is to find someone who really knows how to work out knots. She laughed, took a sip of her wine, completely unaware that I already knew her routine. Then she dropped the final clue. I have another appointment tomorrow evening, she said, twirling a strand of hair between her fingers. So I'll be home late. I nodded, forcing a smile. Sounds great. You deserve some relaxation. She smiled back, completely oblivious, and the next evening, while she went to her massage, I got in my car and followed her. I parked down the street, far enough that she wouldn't notice me. I watched as she pulled into Serenity Spa. For a moment, I wondered if I was wrong. If maybe, just maybe, she wasn't cheating. But then, 20 minutes later, she walked back out. She wasn't glowing like she had just had a relaxing massage. She was looking around nervously, checking her phone. Then a black sedan pulled up right in front of the spa. I watched, barely breathing, as she leaned into the driver's window, smiling in a way that sent a wave of nausea through me. Then, she got in, the car pulled out, and I followed. The black sedan drove straight to the apartment complex I had seen on her Google Maps history. I parked across the street, my heart pounding. Then I saw him. The driver stepped out. A tall, muscular guy, wearing a fitted polo and athletic pants. He had that casual confidence that made me instantly hate him. Then Emily stepped out of the car. She laughed at something he said. Touched his arm, and then, as if to remove any doubt from my mind, she reached up and kissed him, right there. Out in the open, not a friendly kiss. Not a quick peck. A real kiss. Then, he put his hand on the small of her back and led her inside his apartment. The door shut behind them, and suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands hurt. Emily was cheating on me, not with an old boyfriend. Not with a coworker, with her massage therapist, the man she had been raving about for weeks. The one she swore was just a professional. And all this time, I had been completely blind. That I felt sick. My stomach twisted, my mind racing through every moment I had ignored, every red flag I had brushed off. She had been lying, right to my face, for months. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had two choices: walk away. Go home, pretend I didn't see anything, and figure out what to do next. End it. Right now. I looked at the apartment door. I thought about all the lies. The fake smiles. The nights she came home, sore, but never wanted me to touch her. Then I opened my car door and walked straight toward the building. Emily had no idea what was coming, and she was about to get the shock of her life. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't knock. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the doorknob and shoved the door open. Emily and the massage therapist were in the living room. She was standing close to him, her hands on his chest, looking up at him like he was the most fascinating man in the world. When the door slammed against the wall, they both jumped. Emily spun around, her eyes going wide with panic. The guy, Jason, if I remembered right, looked between us, instantly realizing he was caught. I locked eyes with Emily. Having a good time? Her mouth opened, then closed. She froze, completely speechless. Jason took a step back, hands up like I had a gun. Hey, man, I don't want any trouble. I ignored him. My attention was on her. The woman who had stood in our kitchen lying to my face for months. Emily swallowed hard. It's not what it looks like. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not what it looks like. You kissed him in the parking lot. I pointed at Jason. You're in his apartment. My voice hardened. So tell me, Emily, what is it, if not what it looks like? She clenched her fists. It's not serious. It's just a thing. A mistake. I shook my head. No. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This? I gestured around. This is a choice. A choice you made over and over. Jason cleared his throat. Look, I think you should leave, I cut him off. Shut up. He did. Emily's eyes flickered with anger. You never paid attention to me. I needed more. I scoffed. So instead of talking to me, you decided to sneak off and let some random guy put his hands all over you? She crossed her arms. I didn't think it would hurt you. That hit harder than anything else. I took a step back, exhaling slowly. You know what? You just made this real easy. Her eyes narrowed. What do you mean? I stared at her for a long moment, then pulled off my wedding ring. I'm done. Emily's face fell. Wait, I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. I stepped out of that apartment and never looked back. Emily was calling after me, her voice sharp with desperation, but I didn't stop. I didn't even pause. Jason didn't follow. Smart guy. The second I got to my car, I pulled off my wedding ring and tossed it onto the passenger seat. My hands were shaking. My mind was racing, replaying everything I had just seen, every excuse she had ever made. I had expected her to lie, to make excuses. But what hit me hardest? She didn't even seem sorry. As I drove home, my mind settled on one decision: this marriage. Over. When I got home, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I sat on the couch, staring at nothing, waiting. Not for her. I knew she'd stay with Jason tonight. She was too much of a coward to come home and face me, but I knew she'd come back. She wouldn't accept that I had walked out so easily. Sure enough, the next morning, I woke up to the sound of the front door opening. Emily was back. She stepped inside like nothing had happened, setting her purse down, avoiding my gaze. We need to talk. I stood, arms crossed. No, Emily. We don't. She sighed. You're just going to end it? Just like that? I nodded. You already ended it. I'm just making it official. Her jaw tightened. I made a mistake. I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah? How many times? How many mistakes did you make before I caught you? She flinched but didn't answer. I want a divorce, I said flatly. Her face darkened. You're not taking the house. I shook my head. I don't care about the house, Emily. I care about getting away from you. She blinked. So that's it? 10 years together, and you're throwing it all away? I met her eyes. No, Emily. You did that. She didn't have a response to that, and for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I felt free. Emily didn't take it well. For the first few days after I told her I wanted a divorce, she tried to act normal. Like we could just sweep everything under the rug, like I'd cool off and we'd go back to playing house. She cooked dinner. She left coffee on the counter for me in the mornings. She even tried to sit next to me on the couch. I ignored all of it. I had nothing left to say to her. Then, when she realized I wasn't going to forgive and forget, she changed tactics, and that's when the real war began. You're making a mistake, she said one evening, arms crossed. You'll regret this. I smirked. Pretty sure I'll be fine. Her eyes narrowed. Well, I hope you're ready, because I'm not letting you just walk away with everything. I leaned back. I don't want everything. I just want to be rid of you. She scoffed. Oh, please. Do you think you're going to walk out of this with all your money? With half of what we own? With the house? I shrugged. I don't even care about the house. That threw her off for a second, then, her face twisted with anger. I won't let you make me look like the bad guy. I laughed. Emily, you are the bad guy. A week later, I filed for divorce. Emily was furious. She swore she'd fight me on everything. And at first, I thought she would, until she met with a lawyer and realized how badly she had screwed herself. Adultery. Check. Lying about finances. Check. Spending marital money on her affair. Big check. Every single piece of evidence worked against her. The text messages, the bank statements, her location history, it all painted a clear picture. She was the cheater. The liar and the law was on my side. At the next legal meeting, her lawyer kept glancing at her uncomfortably because even he knew she had no ground to stand on. Mr. Dawson is willing to settle fairly, my lawyer said. But if we go to court, things will not go in your favor, Mrs. Dawson. Emily sat stiffly, hands clenched in her lap. I could see the moment it hit her. She wasn't going to win, she wasn't going to take the house, she wasn't going to drain me financially, she had lost. And when she turned to me, her eyes filled with rage, I just smiled that I had won. Emily wasn't used to losing. For years, she had been the one who controlled things. The one who got her way. She manipulated, twisted words, played the victim when it suited her, and now, she was sitting in a divorce negotiation, watching everything slip through her fingers. That I could see it on her face, the sheer disbelief, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. She had walked into this thinking she could win, she had thought she could punish me for leaving her, but reality had finally caught up with her and she hated it. For the next few weeks, Emily fought tooth and nail to get anything she could. She tried to argue that she deserved half of my income. The court disagreed. She claimed I was trying to ruin her life. Her own cheating proved otherwise. She delayed paperwork, ignored emails, stalled at every turn. Her strategy was clear: she couldn't win, so she would drag it out as long as possible, making my life miserable in the process. But I didn't budge. I showed up to every meeting, signed every document, stayed calm, and that's what finally broke her, because no matter what games she played, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't fighting. I was just walking away, and that was something she couldn't handle. The night before our final divorce hearing, Emily showed up at my house, unannounced. She had a key, but I had changed the locks. So instead, she stood outside, knocking over and over until I finally answered. I opened the door and stared at her. "What are you doing here?" She smiled. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't spent the past few months making my life hell. I wanted to talk. I crossed my arms. "We have nothing to talk about." She sighed dramatically, stepping closer. "Can we not be like this? We spent years together. We loved each other once." I didn't say anything. Emily reached out, brushing a hand against my arm. "Don't you miss me?" I actually laughed. "You're unbelievable." She frowned, her eyes flashing with frustration. "What? You think you're better than me now?" I shook my head. "No, Emily. I just know exactly who you are. And I'm done." Her face twisted in anger. "You think you're going to find someone better than me?" "I already did," I said. "Myself." For the first time, she had nothing to say. She stood there, staring at me, realizing I wasn't coming back, and then, without another word, she turned and walked away. That was the last time I ever saw her. The next day, it was over. The judge signed off on everything. Emily got nothing but the thing she came into the marriage with. No alimony. No big payout. I walked out of that courthouse a free man, and for the first time in years, I felt light. No more lies. No more manipulation. No more Emily, just me, and I had never been happier. The day the divorce was finalized, I walked out of that courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. No more Emily. No more manipulation. No more wondering if the person I trusted most was lying to my face. For the first time in a long time, my life was truly mine again. But freedom wasn't just about cutting ties with Emily. It was about figuring out who I was without Hega. Years, my home had been filled with Emily's voice, complaining, demanding, twisting conversations to suit her needs. Now, it was quiet. At first, the silence felt strange. I expected to hear her footsteps, her passive-aggressive sighs, her fake, overly cheerful tone when she wanted something. But after a few weeks, the silence wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. I started to enjoy being alone. No tension. No arguments. No second-guessing every little thing I did. I could breathe again. The biggest surprise after the divorce? People started coming back into my life. Friends I hadn't seen in years started texting. Guys from work invited me out for drinks. Even family members, who had kept their distance because of Emily, suddenly wanted to reconnect. One night, my best friend Chris pulled me aside at a bar and said, "Man, I don't know how to say this, but we all knew Emily was bad news. We just didn't know how to tell you." I frowned. "Why didn't anyone say anything?" He shrugged. "You wouldn't have believed us. She had you wrapped around her finger." And he was right. I had spent years defending her, excusing her behavior, convincing myself that things were normal. It was only now, standing on the outside, that I saw the truth. Emily had been poison, and without her, my life was finally mine again. At some point, people started asking the question, "So, when are you getting back out there?" Honestly, I wasn't in a rush. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't constantly worried about someone else's feelings. I didn't have to walk on eggshells or wonder if I was being lied to. I wasn't lonely. I was enjoying my freedom. I wasn't looking for anyone. But then, life has a funny way of surprising you. It happened at a coffee shop of all places. I had started going there every morning, just to get out of the house. It became part of my routine: grab a coffee, read a book, enjoy the fact that I could sit in peace without Emily criticizing everything I did. And that's when I met Sophie. She was sitting at the table next to mine, completely absorbed in her laptop. She had that kind of effortless beauty, messy hair, oversized sweater, eyes that crinkled when she smiled that I wouldn't have even spoken to her if she hadn't accidentally knocked over my coffee. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, grabbing napkins. I laughed, shaking my head. "It's fine. Trust me, this isn't the worst thing that's happened to me lately." She smiled at that. "Rough morning? Rough year?" And just like that, we started talking. It wasn't forced. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't like the exhausting games I had played with Emily for years. It was just easy. I wasn't looking for a relationship, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, good things were ahead. It started with coffee, just casual conversations at the little cafe near my house. No expectations, no pressure. After everything I had been through, I wasn't looking for anything serious. I wasn't even sure if I was ready to trust someone again, but Sophie, she had this way of making things feel easy. We started running into each other more often. Sometimes by accident. Sometimes, not so accidentally. One morning, as she stirred sugar into her coffee, she smiled at me and said, "So, are you going to ask me out, or do I have to keep spilling your drinks to get your attention?" I laughed. I hesitated, then, finally, I said, "Yeah. I think I am." I hadn't been on a real date in over a decade. The last time I'd taken a woman out, people were still renting DVDs at Blockbuster. Now? Dating apps, texting rules, social media stalking, it was a whole new world. But with Sophie, I didn't feel the usual pressure. I didn't have to impress her with expensive dinners or rehearse stories. She made it clear from the start, she wasn't about games. We went to a quiet restaurant by the water, somewhere casual. I expected the usual small talk. "What do you do? Where are you from? What's your favorite movie?" Instead, Sophie leaned in, looked me right in the eye, and asked, "What's the worst thing that ever happened to you?" I almost choked on my drink. "That's a hell of a first date question." She smirked. "I hate small talk. If we're going to sit here for 2 hours, I want to know the real you." I stared at her for a second, debating if I wanted to go there. Then, against my better judgment, I told her about Emily. The lies. The betrayal. The years of manipulation I didn't even recognize until it was too late. I expected her to look at me with pity. Maybe even judgment. Instead, she just nodded. "Yeah," she said. "That's rough. But honestly, you don't seem bitter. You seem relieved." I thought about that for a second, and then I realized, she was right. It had been months since I last saw Emily. The divorce was final. I had moved on. I didn't think about her anymore. But just when I thought she was out of my life forever, she found a way to slither back in. One night, I was locking up my house when I heard a knock on the door. I opened it, and there she was, Emily. She looked different. Not worse, not better, just different. Her hair was pulled back, her face more serious than I had ever seen it. I crossed my arms. What do you want? She hesitated. Can I come in? I almost laughed. No, her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she sighed. I need to talk to you. I leaned against the doorframe. About what? We have nothing left to discuss. She fidgeted. I've been thinking a lot. About everything. About what I did. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? You mean cheating? Lying? Gaslighting me for years? She flinched but didn't deny it. I was wrong, she admitted. I messed up. And I lost everything because of it. For a moment, I actually felt bad for her, but then I remembered who she was. What do you want, Emily? I asked again. She hesitated. I just thought maybe, after all this time, we could be friends. I stared at her, trying to process what I had just heard. Friends? I actually laughed. A real, deep laugh. You think we can be friends? She nodded slowly. I know I hurt you. I know I ruined things. But I don't want to be the villain in your life forever. I shook my head, still smiling. Emily, you don't get to decide that. You don't get to cheat, lie, manipulate me, drag me through hell, and then come back and say, hey, let's be friends. Her expression fell. I just don't want things to be like this. Well, they are. I took a step back. And you need to accept that. She blinked hard, like she was fighting back tears. So, that's it? We'll never talk again? I shrugged. I don't see why we would. Emily exhaled sharply, nodded, and stepped back. Okay, she whispered. Goodbye. And just like that, she turned and walked away. This time, I didn't feel anger, that I didn't feel pain, that I just felt done, and for the first time in years, I had no regrets. That a few weeks later, I told Sophie about Emily's visit. She didn't get jealous or angry. She didn't tell me to block her or go off on some dramatic rant. She just smiled and said, that's what closure looks like. And she was right. Emily was part of my past. Sophie, she just might be part of my future. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back anymore, and honestly, life had never felt better. It had been nearly a year since my divorce, and life had settled into something I never expected: peace and no stress. No walking on eggshells. No second-guessing every little thing I did, and best of all, no Emily. Instead, there was Sophie. What started as casual coffee shop conversations had turned into something real. But even with how easy things felt with her, I wasn't naive enough to think I had completely escaped the damage Emily left behind, because some wounds, they take time to heal. One night, Sophie and I were out to dinner when she noticed something was off. I wasn't being cold, but I wasn't fully there either. I was caught in my own head, playing out old memories, things Emily used to do, ways she used to manipulate me. It was like my brain was warning me, don't trust too fast. Don't get comfortable. Sophie reached across the table, snapping me out of it. Okay, she said, tilting her head. Tell me what's going on. I shook my head. It's nothing. Just tired. She didn't buy it. Is it nothing, or are you overthinking things again? I sighed. Both. She didn't push, but her eyes softened. If you're waiting for me to turn into her, it's not gonna happen. I exhaled, rubbing the back of my neck. I know. It's not you. It's everything she did. The way she messed with my head. I just don't want to be stupid again. Sophie nodded, then said something I didn't expect. Okay. So how do we fix that? I blinked. What? She shrugged. You're not gonna undo years of manipulation overnight. But if we know what the problem is, we can work on it together. That's when it hit me. She wasn't Emily. She wasn't going to guilt me, twist my words, make me feel bad for needing time. She just wanted to help. And that was new for me. Things were going well, too well, maybe, because just when I thought I had finally moved forward, Emily found a way to crawl back into my life. It started with a random voicemail that I saw her name flash on my screen and immediately debated whether I should even listen to it. Curiosity won. I hit play. Emily's voice came through, soft and careful, like she was choosing her words too perfectly. Hey. I know it's been a long time, and I have no right to be calling, but I just wanted to say. I miss you. I paused the message right there. Miss me? No. She missed control. She missed having me wrapped around her finger, but I wasn't that guy anymore. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the rest, and just like that, Emily lost the last piece of power she ever had over me. A few weeks later, Sophie and I were at my place, stretched out on the couch after a long day. She was scrolling through her phone when she casually said, "So, have you ever thought about living with someone again?" I froze. Sophie noticed and laughed. Relax. I'm not asking you to move in tomorrow. I'm just curious. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. That was a lie. I had thought about it. A lot, but part of me was still hesitant. Living with Emily had been hell. Every little thing I did was criticized. Every decision was a battle. What if moving in with someone again meant giving up my freedom? Sophie seemed to read my mind. You know I'm not like her, right? I nodded. I know. It's just, a lot. She smiled. Then let's not rush. I'm happy with what we have right now. And just like that, she took the pressure off. She let me breathe, and that's when I knew, Sophie wasn't just someone I was dating, she was someone I could actually build something with. One night, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I caught myself smiling for no reason. No stress. No doubts. No waiting for things to fall apart. It felt right, and maybe, just maybe, I was ready for something more. I looked over at Sophie, curled up on the couch, laughing at something on her phone, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Life was good. Really good. Sophie and I had settled into something that felt effortless, something I never thought I'd experience after Emily. But just when I was finally letting go of the past, something happened that forced me to confront it, and this time, I couldn't just walk away. One afternoon, I was at work when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hey, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I need to talk to you. Please. I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. I knew exactly who it was, Emily. I had ignored her last voicemail. Deleted it without a second thought. But now, she was reaching out again. I should have ignored this too, but something about the message felt different. It wasn't manipulative. It wasn't demanding. It just felt like a plea. Against my better judgment, I responded. What do you want? She texted back almost immediately. Can we meet? Just once. I swear I won't waste your time. I debated it for a long time. I didn't owe her anything, but something told me I needed to hear what she had to say, for closure, for me. So, I agreed. I met her at a small cafe on the edge of town, the kind of place we never went to when we were together. She was already there when I walked in, sitting at a booth by the window, stirring a cup of tea like she was trying to delay whatever she had to say. She looked different. Not worse, not better. Just older. Tired. I sat down across from her. All right. I'm here. Talk. She looked up, her eyes scanning my face like she was searching for something. You seem happy, she said softly. I folded my arms. I am. She nodded, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. That's good. I sighed, already getting impatient. Emily, why am I here? She exhaled slowly. I wanted to apologize. For real this time. I raised an eyebrow. You already tried that in an email. She shook her head. That wasn't real. That was me doing what I thought I should do. But this? This is me finally understanding what I did to you. I stayed silent, waiting. She swallowed hard. I ruined everything. And I don't just mean our marriage. I mean you. I can see it now. The way I treated you, the way I made you feel like you were never enough. I broke something in you. I clenched my jaw. Yeah. You did. She nodded, looking down. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed to say it. For the first time, Emily wasn't trying to twist things, she wasn't making excuses, she was just owning it, and surprisingly, I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt done. I stood up, tossing a few bills on the table for my drink. I appreciate the apology, Emily. But it doesn't change anything. I've moved on. And you need to do the same. She blinked up at me. So that's it? I nodded. That's it. And just like that, I walked away, for good. That night, I told Sophie about the meeting. That I expected her to be worried, maybe even annoyed that I had agreed to see Emily. Instead, she just smiled. How do you feel now? I thought about it, then, I smiled back. Lighter. She leaned over and kissed my cheek. Then I'd say it was worth it. And she was right, because for the first time in a long, long time, Emily was just a chapter in my past, and Sophie, she was my future. For the first time in years, I felt free. Emily was officially a closed book. The final conversation we had wasn't some grand moment of forgiveness, it wasn't about rekindling anything. It was just closure. That I had moved on. And now, I could do so completely. And as I sat on my porch that evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized something. For the first time in a long, long time, I was happy. Life with Sophie had been easy. Natural. She never forced me to rush things. Never pushed for something I wasn't ready for, but the truth, I was ready. One night, we were sitting on the couch, her feet tucked under her as she absent-mindedly scrolled through her phone, and I just knew that I didn't need to overthink it. I didn't need some dramatic, over-the-top proposal. So I reached into my pocket, pulled out the small box I'd been carrying around for weeks, and placed it on the table between us. Sophie looked up, her brow furrowing. What's this? I smiled. Open it. She hesitated, her hands shaking slightly as she flipped open the box. Inside was a simple ring. Nothing flashy. Nothing extravagant, just us. She blinked, looking up at me with wide eyes. Is this? I nodded. I don't need a big speech. I just know I don't want to go through life without you. Tears welled up in her eyes. You're really bad at this whole romantic speech thing, you know that? I grinned. Yeah, but does that mean you're saying no? She let out a choked laugh, then tackled me into a hug. I'm saying yes, idiot. And just like that, my life had finally taken a new turn. The wedding wasn't a huge event. No lavish ceremony. No unnecessary drama. Just family, close friends, and two people who knew exactly what they wanted. As Sophie walked toward me, looking like she had stepped out of a dream, I felt a familiar emotion rise in my chest, not anxiety, not doubt, peace. This wasn't like before. This wasn't built on illusions, manipulation, or control. This was real. And as we exchanged vows, as she slid the ring onto my finger, I knew I had finally found the love I deserved. Looking back, I realized something about pain. Sometimes, it's the thing that breaks you. But if you survive it, if you learn from it, it's also the thing that makes you stronger. Emily had been a lesson, Sophie was the reward for learning it. And as I stood there, holding my wife's hands, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just the end of my old life. This was the beginning of something new, and I was finally free.